Uh, Good morning to all of you. On behalf of the Additional Director General NASI and also on behalf of the Additional Director General Directorate of Taxpayer Services Chennai Zone and Bangalore Zone, I invite each one of you for this special session on the myths, realities, and importance of vaccination. To take the program forward, I now request our Additional Director, Sri S. Keshav Narayan Reddy sir, to deliver his welcome address, please.
Respected Sri R. Manohar, Additional Director, Directorate General of Taxpayer Service, Chennai and Bangalore Zones, Dr. R. M. Pitchappan, Retired Professor, Madurai Kamaraj University, Madurai, Sri P. Ram Mohan, Joint Director, DCTPS, Chennai Zonal Unit, Sri R. Srivasthan, AAD, Nasin, Chennai, officers and staff of Team Nasin, Chennai, officers and staff of DCTPS, Chennai and Bangalore Zonal Unit, and officers of CBIC attending this webinar. Good morning to one and all. National Academy of Customs, Indirect Taxes and Narcotics Zonal Training Unit, Chennai, in association with DCTPS, that is Director General of Taxpayer Services, Chennai and Bangalore Zonal Unit, is organizing a very important and relevant webinar on the topic COVID-19 immunization, myths and realities, and the importance of vaccination. As you know very well that COVID-19 pandemic is caused by SARS virus. For the past 17 or 18 months, it has caused lakhs of human deaths, social and mental trauma, and some severe economic and job loss all over the world. Everybody got badly affected directly or indirectly through COVID-19. It has changed our behavior and way of life, so much so that there are hundreds of myths circulating around the world through various media, including social media, about COVID-19 pandemic, immunization and vaccination. As you know very well that myth is a misconception or widely held false belief or idea, which in reality is not true. Some ignorant people or people with vested interests will spread or circulate the myths for their selfish interests. Some of the widely circulated myths are: through vaccination, people will get electrical and magnetic power. Antibiotics are effective against COVID-19. Indian and African people have very good immunity against COVID-19 due to their environmental conditions. Our eminent immunologist, Dr. R. M. Pitchappan sir, will shatter all myths and give us clear picture about the reality about COVID-19, immunization, and also this vaccination with scientific evidence and reasoning. Everyone has realized the importance of vaccination to protect themselves from COVID-19. As you know very well that India has vaccinated about 25 crore individuals. I hope that by the end of 2021, we will be vaccinating majority of our population. It is better to learn about vaccination from our expert. With this, I welcome all the officers and staff of CBIC to this very important webinar, COVID-19 myths and realities and importance of vaccination. I request everybody to utilize this facility. One more request is please follow the COVID appropriate behavior and protocol at home and office, and request you to take care of your family members. Thank you very much. Over to Srivasthan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the welcome address. Now, may I take the privilege of requesting our Additional Director General, Sri R. Manoharan IRS, DGTPS Chennai Zone and Bangalore Zone, to deliver his inaugural address, please. Over to you, sir, please. Sir, you can unmute yourself, sir, please.
Distinguished guest speaker, Professor Dr. R. M. Pitchappan, my dear colleagues and the representatives from the trade, very good morning to one and all. 15 months back, we would have never dreamt of a situation that the life will go topsy-turvy to an unimaginable situation. Streets are vacant, no vehicles, no people. If some people are spotted, they are wearing masks. If some vehicles are spotted, they are nothing but ambulances. All the establishments are closed. The only establishment which is open is hospitals and very busy. People, though stuck to their homes, they live with a fear of death. Future turned gloomy and grim, economy plummeted, the livelihood of people severely hampered. What led to this pathetic situation? The reason is very simple. A 20 nanometer sized virus reported during December 2019 causing pneumonia. The virus is a cricket ball shaped with a spike all around. The unknown virus was initially called as a novel coronavirus. Later, World Health Organization named it as COVID-19. The virus started meandering all over the world, crippling the lives of the people. World Health Organization declared officially on 11th March 2020 as pandemic. So far, 220 countries succumbed to corona. Worldwide, 17.6 crore people got infected and the death is 36 lakh. Whereas in India, 2.9 crore people have been infected and death count is 3.7 lakh. At the early stages, not much was known about the behavior of the coronavirus and much was also not known about the treatment protocols. However, over the period of a time, the knowledge of the virus has trickling in, allowing the doctors to make the adjustments in the treatment protocols. We, the people, also started adjusting ourselves, our lifestyle, owing to the increased knowledge about the coronavirus. We in India had the benefit of ancient wisdom of medicines like Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, homeopathy, which has helped largely in reducing the severity of the infection. The world researchers and the experts knew that vaccine is the only solution in containing the spread of the coronavirus. Advanced countries geared up to develop vaccine for COVID and succeeded in their attempt in finding out a vaccine within 1 year of setting in of pandemic. It is a matter of pride that India has also developed a vaccine indigenously. Currently, there are 2 vaccines available in India. We are facing second wave of corona. First wave was lasted 9 months. After a brief break, second wave set in. The second wave is more virulent, weird, arrogant, and disastrous. The death rates are high. First wave witnessed the death of older people, whereas the second wave witnessed even the younger people too. At this point, I have to mention, like now, we have lost precious life of many of our departmental officers, even at the highest level. The impending third wave expected to affect even the children too. Medical experts predict that 4 waves will last for few more years. The flu, which has set in 1917, came to an end in 1921. Thus, going by this logic, we may have to live with the corona for at least 2 more years. Whether the spread will continue or not lies in our hands. Sooner the entire population is vaccinated, sooner the spread of deadly virus will be arrested. Though a couple of vaccines available in the present, the reluctance of the larger section of the population to inoculate themselves with the vaccine is an area of concern. Probably the misinformation or lack of information might have played a major role in promoting the reluctance. To dispel these fears, one needs to be armed with a thorough knowledge about the vaccine. Frontline workers like our customs and GST officers need to be properly inculcated with the knowledge of the pandemic and benefits of the vaccination. Therefore, we, the DGTS Chennai and Bangalore zonal units, have arranged this webinar in coordination with NASEN Chennai for the benefit of our officers and the trade in our region. The expert speaker in this domain is Professor Dr. R.M. Pitchappan, who has headed the Department of Immunology, Madurai Kamaraj University, and also served as a Director of Research at Chettinadu Health City and Research Institute, Chennai. Professor Pitchappan is a renowned name in the field of medical immunology in India and has contributed immensely to the subject. He is a widely traveled scientist. His credentials will be spoken about separately in the introduction to this speaker part. I am glad that Professor Pitchappan has accepted our request for the webinar and hope that all the officers and members of the trade attending this session would benefit immensely of the webinar. I also thank personally Professor Pitchappan for immediately consenting to our request to handle this session. With these words, I take pleasure in inaugurating this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the inaugural address. In fact, you had set the tone.
Of introducing Dr. Professor Ramasamy Pitchappan, who will be taking the class as spelled out by our Additional Director General and Additional Director NASIM also. Professor Ramasamy Pitchappan is a Fellow of the National Academy of Medical Sciences and a Fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences. He is a pioneer in immunology of infectious diseases, transplantation immunology, and human genomics in India. He was a professor of immunology from 1986 to 2006 at Madurai Kamaraj University and served as the coordinator, School of Biological Sciences from 2005 to 2006. Post-retirement from Madurai Kamaraj University in 2016, he undertook a global genographic project tracing the migration of man through globe. He served as Director of Research in Chettinad Academy of Research and Education from 2010 to 2016. During the period 2017 to 19, he was Adjunct Professor, Regional Medical Research Center, ICMR at Port Blair. Professor Pitchappan and Dr. Spencer Wells, the Director of the Genographic Project, were the keynote speakers in the plenary of the 10th World Tamil Conference held at Chicago in the United States of America on the 7th July 2019. Their lectures on the genographic and the Dravidian, a living civilization for yester millennia, were well received. He is one of the 16 in the world and only one from India to be invited as a speaker in 2008 UNESCO Paris Conference, the first great migrations of peoples. In 2020, he was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award, Genome Medicine by Genome Medicine Consortium UK. In 2020 December, Professor Pitchappan has been honored with Lifetime Achievement Award for his pioneering work on leprosy, tuberculosis, human population genetics, and the genographic by the Genomic Medicine Consortium UK. He is one of the 8 from India and only one of the 30 from the whole world. His awards are numerous. To list out a few, in 2018, he won the Star Award, IBCN 2019 at the International Business Conference of Nagarthar. 2015, he was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Indian Association for Applied Microbiologists in India. In 2011, Darwin of India Award by the American Tamil Medical Association, Washington Greater Area, United States of America. 2001, he was a recipient of H.M. Bhatia Oration Award instituted by the ICMR IAH Mumbai. 1995, he received the Investigator Award for Tuberculosis in Lancet, Washington, USA. In 1986, he was a recipient of JIC's Outstanding Young Person Award, Tamil Nadu. Sir, we are indeed honored and privileged to be hearing from such a distinguished man. I am sure a lot of myths and misunderstandings in the minds of people with regard to vaccination in particular and COVID-19 in general would be cleared at the end of this session. So we, on behalf of the Additional Director General, NAS in Chennai, as well as the Additional Director General of Taxpayer Service, officers and staff of Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, we welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Dear respected Manohar and Narayan Reddy, the DGs of Customs Excise. It's a great privilege and honor really to talk to you this morning to allay some of the fears that has been created by the COVID-19. We live in a world which is really a global village as on date. So anything happening in one part of the world spreads in a week time to the whole world. It was not the case some 20, 30 years ago. The infection spread slowly. There was only one train from Madurai to Chennai those days. So it is really the elites of this country and the officers like you in various departments need to be well informed about the various facts and factors that determines the susceptibility to COVID. So let me share my slides, and I will take about 40-45 minutes, and then we can have a discussion further. Do you see my slides, sir? At the outset, I thank each one of you attending this session. Now, the COVID-19 immunization, all right, whom to be given, when to be given, and how, and also why. Is there any other options as well? So let us look at the myths and realities. So many of my lectures and videos are available in my web pages for you to see later. So as early as April 11th, 2020, I spoke to Times of India, and then I was of the opinion that lockdown must not continue, but be relaxed in phases. The reasons were very clear to me, though not to the people making the decisions. Now, it is like any other flu. COVID-19 is like any other flu. But in elderly and compromised, it invades much faster than the development of immunity. It surpasses the immunity. This is what is happening. It may set in undue inflammatory process in this way. Now, the hype and panic created by media, international scenario, various countries were all bewildering and made us to run helter-skelter. It is purely because of lack of understanding and the free misinformation campaign by the media, the electronic media, and also the technology-driven statistics. Now, for example, just yesterday, there was a news, nearly 24,000 children tested positive for COVID in AP in last 2 weeks. What does it mean? That means in these children, you could identify the presence of COVID virus. Is it a disease then? In my opinion, it has just entered into the body if it is 2 weeks, and if the child has not developed the disease in 2 weeks after testing positive, the probability the child may develop the disease further is very bleak, because already the immunity would have protected, the innate immunity would have protected. I will come in a minute and explain the different kind of immunities. So what? Now, the parents should be happy really that these children have been naturally immunized by the subclinical infection from the environment, and they would be much more fitter to live in this world, in this epidemic-laden world. Now, regarding the vaccine reality, why should we be immunized? Now, the immunization offers a preemptive protection. Even before an infectious agent infects you and you develop the disease, by administering a blunt virus, blunt in the sense a virus that doesn't really cause a disease. So we sometimes call it attenuated. Now that is what is happening, okay, or heat killed or spike protein alone apart. So it is called prophylaxis. Some 250 years ago, Jenner discovered the cowpox vaccine in England. So now I will just present a few data for you to appreciate my views. This is one will be on pandemic, what it is, and what are the world statistics say, and what is the Indian scenario. This is, if you just enter into the WHO bulletins, COVID or Indian platforms, you get plenty of information. So the dashboard here, they say, this is some 2 weeks old. In the Americas, you just see from March on, there has been 3 waves. Okay, the same was true almost first and second wave together. The first one started much later. This is in Europe, everything. Southeast Asia, just look at, you have only 2, the first one and then the second one. In Eastern Mediterranean, you have again 3 peaks. What makes the Southeast Asia to have only 2 peaks? Now, I give some statistics on that. It is a bit congested. This is actually the population size, landmass, population density per square kilometer, median age, the urban population, and the population as a world share. Believe the China has 18.5% of the world population. India has 17.7%. The America, the next highest, has only 4.25%. So India and China has to feed and take care of just almost about 35-40% of the people. So I just also give a comparison. Sorry, the spelling M I have missed. So I could not edit it in the PowerPoint. So anyway, I left it, okay? Compared to India, what is the population size? If we take India as 1, United States is 0.24 and Russia is 0.11. As per land mass, India is 1, China is 3.16, United States is 3, and Russia is 5.5 times higher land mass they have. And this also reflects in the population density per square kilometer. You see, in India is the highest 464. One another country which is the highest is about 1,200 is Bangladesh, but it's a very small area. For historical reasons, it has such a high amount. And China has only 153 per square kilometer. United States has only 36, and the Russia only just 9. So you can compare, it is only 0.02 times of India. Now, if you take the median age that counts in terms of development, the India has younger population, and Nigeria is the most young, and also Ethiopia. Now, in terms of urban population, the America has 83% living in urban settings. This matters when crowding, urbanization, and the space available for movement matters in terms of transmission or transmissibility of the disease. And that way, India, they say it's 35%. Somewhere I read it is 40 to 50%, some Indian statistics. And Brazil, 88%, okay? So when you really look at working a strategy, you need to really take into consideration all these demographic parameters in decision making. The same data I am just presenting in a graphical form for you to appreciate. Just look at that. This is the highest. But in terms of land in square kilometer, Russia. In terms of population density, India. In terms of urban population, America and also Russia and China, but we are much less. Okay, so if you just, there are many websites. One is called Worldometer. If you just open and see that, it will be clicking every minute or every second or every alternate second, depending on the birth rate. Okay. One thing what I wanted you to see in this graph is, you see, it was just increasing some little exponential increase, and then now seems to be tapering a bit. But by 2015, it looks like we'll be adding about another 30 crore people. So now this is again a very congested slide, but don't worry, I will just explain to you to derive at something. One, I was baffled for quite some time and inquired with many people who were reporting this. What do you mean by cases, total cases? Simply, whoever is turning positive, they have started calling them as cases. This is the problem. Okay. Now, I will just go ahead. So if you take, for example, India, total number of cases were about 28 million, whereas 0.34 million is the total death. When you compare these total cases per million population, it is the minimal, 245 deaths per million population. Okay. So then you just compare this with this population size. Okay. So now when we draw the conclusions, you need to really compare total cases as well as the deaths. So total tests done was 357 million. Okay. Now what is the proportion of this? We will come to that. I will come over there. So in other words, if you just extrapolate all these figures, only 8% of the total tested are positive. And 1.2% of positive cases only died. In other words, 0.1, you take it. Otherwise, 1 in 1,000 tested only died. Okay? Now, the panic was essentially due to nobody knew the mode of spread, how it spread, and who are vulnerable. That is where the problem set in. So, in other words, 25.7% of the population have been tested. In other words, if you take about 1,000 rupees or so per test, it's about 36,000 crore rupees we have, in essence, spent on this. It's a huge amount. So now the critical question is, do we need to test all the rest? 100%? Or is it sufficient to test only the index cases, their families, and the immediate contacts or the counties? I will come to that. Government need to essentially make a decision at this point so that we save plenty of money. Since a vaccine has come, that can be spent over there. So the vaccine reality, next, I will just explain. I will present some immunology, and also in the next slide, I will just show you some animated pictures from the web, how the coronavirus infects. So how does the vaccine work? This is the domain of immunology. Immunology is the most sophisticated system of our body. The immune system is almost similar to any other organ system, like respiratory system, circulatory system, nervous system, reproductive system, and so on. But it is the most sophisticated in my opinion. It is responsible for identifying and fighting the invader, alien, be it a bacteria or a virus or a parasite. Whatever is foreign, they are recognized by the immune system. Sometimes our own body's own tissue are also recognized as foreign. That we cluster under a group called autoimmune disorders. Okay? Now, the essence of vaccination is once an individual has, or his immune system has seen a virus, it develops an immunity, and that immunity, in general, the viral antiviral immunity is lifelong. And this memory resides in some white blood cells called lymphocytes. They are like police cops, say for example. They are the warriors in immunology. Protective force, police force, all the time playing a immunological surveillance, either on the border soldiers or in the civilian society, 24/7 into a lifetime of somebody. So, and if you really look at how nature has really organized this, you will be bewildered. You may not see such a kind of sophistication in any other system. Next to this is only nervous system where the memory resides in the brain. So now, let us have a look at some animation that presents you the viral immunity.
COVID-19 is the short name for the disease known as novel coronavirus disease 2019. Coronaviruses are a large group of similar viruses. Some are known to infect humans, such as SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV. The one that causes COVID-19 is called SARS-CoV-2. All coronaviruses are named for the crown-like spikes that cover their surface, called spike or S proteins. Inside the virus, genetic material called RNA is made up of genes. Genes carry the information to make more copies of the virus. The virus can infect you if it enters your mouth, nose, or lungs. Inside your body, the S protein of the virus locks to a receptor on the surface of one of your cells. This can trigger the virus to enter the cell in a couple of ways. It may cause the virus to fuse with the cell surface, then release its genes into the cell. Or the cell may pull the virus inside by enclosing it in a sac. Once inside, the virus can fuse to the sac and release its genes. Next, the genes use a structure in your cell called a ribosome to make new copies of the virus. The new viruses travel to the surface of the cell. There, they leave to infect more cells. In the meantime, viral S proteins left on the surface of the infected cell can cause it to fuse with nearby healthy cells, forming a giant cell. This may be another way for the virus to spread between cells. People may be infected with COVID-19 for 2 to 14 days before symptoms appear. The three main symptoms of COVID-19 are a fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Other symptoms may include tiredness, body aches, stuffy nose, sore throat, diarrhea and vomiting, loss of appetite, and loss of smell. Most people have a mild illness and can recover at home. Some people who have the virus may not get sick at all or may show no symptoms. But if you have trouble breathing or any other symptoms that are severe, call your doctor or the emergency room. They will tell you what to do. For most people who have the virus, the risk for serious illness is thought to be low. People 65 years and older may have a higher risk for serious illness. And people of any age may be at high risk if they have underlying conditions, such as chronic lung disease or asthma, serious heart conditions, diabetes, severe obesity, chronic kidney disease, and liver disease. High-risk groups also include people with a weakened immune system, including those on certain medications, such as corticosteroids, people in cancer treatment, and those with HIV or AIDS. Even if you aren't in a high-risk group, it's important to practice social distancing, which means keeping at least 2 meters or 6 feet between you and other people. This helps prevent infections and serious illness in others as well as yourself. For up-to-date information about COVID-19 and other ways to prevent its spread, visit the CDC website at cdc.gov/coronavirus/2019-NCOV.
Yes, that is about the virus, COVID. Sorry for the mishap. I touched something and some other PowerPoints showed. Okay. Now, coming back to the immune system. Hello? Is it audible? Hello. So, coming back to the immune system, as I told you, the white blood cells, and particularly the monocytes and also granulocytes, are responsible for antigen processing, presentation, recognition, and also antibody production. Now, look at this box. You have neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil, and also monocyte. They all have phagocytosing capacity. And the monocyte is specifically presents the virus or any antigen to the cells of the immune system, particularly lymphocyte. So this is a monocyte, this is actually a neutrophil, and this is actually a small lymphocyte we call. It is almost of the same size of red blood cells. This is the red blood cell smear. So these macrophages are the first line defense, and they capture the bacteria, and that is called innate immune system. Then when it fails, or when the disease further progress, or when the monocyte or phagocyte scavenger cells present the viral proteins to the lymphocytes, then the unique cells of the immune system, it's about 2 million lymphocytes are there in each ml of our blood, believe, all the time circulating and carrying out a surveillance role. So they recognize the foreign, which is presented by this macrophage. If it is recognized as foreign, then the cell really ring the alarm bell. If the protein or the peptide presented by this macrophage is of self origin, then the cells don't care. Okay. So if it is recognized as non-self, self and non-self, or foreign, then these lymphocytes proliferate They collaborate with other similar lymphocytes. We have two different types, T lymphocyte and B lymphocyte, and leading to B cell leading to production of antibody, and the another CTL, CD8 cell going in for CTL, that is a cytotoxic T lymphocyte, which directly goes and kills the viral infected cells. At this stage also inflammation may happen. Now, in both these arms, B cell as well as T cell, after the vaccination or after the disease, after proliferating and then serving their purpose, they become quiescent, go and sit in the paracortex area of the lymph nodes. So they are called as memory cells. So during second immunization or subsequently when you are infected with a virus, virulent virus, if you have already been vaccinated, these memory cells come to the rescue, and instead of immune response reaching the peak by about 7 to 10 days, in 2 to 3 days it reaches the peak. So then these are the soldiers with a shoot at sight order and ordnance factory, like they produce the ammunition. So these all are called as adaptive immune system. This is also determined by your host genetics, and this is actually the second line defense. I will come to that at the end of this lecture on the immunogenetics. So this is a classical textbook picture, but with reference to the COVID, from a COVID review, I took it. So this is called the CD4 and CD8 positive T cells after infection, symptom onset, then this is the growth pattern of it. And these cells are involved here also. They become plasmablast, and then they produce memory B cells also. And then the B cells also produce IgM and IgA antibody. So in COVID, they show in this picture only by 4th week you get IgM and IgA peaks. But in general, in immunology, in all the experiences, in 2 weeks' time itself, enough antibody might be produced. I am not sure whether with the COVID this is the case, but this is a picture they presented. Then this is, rather than this, another type of antibody called IgG, again produced by the same B lymphocyte. It is called a class switch. These are highly avid, highly efficient than this in containing. But as per this diagram, it is only by 7th week. And these are produced in plenty in the secondary immune response. That is when you give a second dose of vaccine. And this is called anamnestic response, okay? Either in reinfection or vaccination. So, however, all these should have contained the COVID-19. But why some people really went in for the oxygen requiring stage and so on? That is essentially because the virus might have been so aggressive before all these protective mechanisms are produced in your body. They have expanded and they have inflicted enough damage, like insurgency. You can divide them into 3 to 4 stages of progression towards the disease. It is a very complicated slide. Don't worry about it. If you want to understand it better later, you can always see that. I will just simply tell you, this is a virus recognition. That is a virus that is presented to cells, and innate immunity takes care of it in about 90% of the cases. That's called interferon gamma and other mediators and phagocytic cells. And the adaptive immunity comes in here, that cytotoxic T lymphocyte antibody. These are the two. Since these two fail, the immune system go haywire, and then you call it what the clinicians call as cytotoxic cytokine storm occurs. This is really the inflammatory process and the resulting. Now there are plenty of information, very good work from US, publications are available, which can, but all these need to be really brought to the clinicians of this country in treating. So, the vaccine reality, the concept immunogenetics, I am going to present it later. I didn't want to tell it earlier. Now, the vaccine, who should be given and when should be given? And here also, before that, I need to tell the Chinese model and the lessons from them for India. Now, why the Chinese model I chose was, these are the two countries with almost similar population size and maybe comparable in terms of epidemic. Now, the COVID vaccines, yes, all vaccines are safe. There have been a lot of controversies on that, but all the vaccines are given 70 to 80% protection with the booster, either with the same vaccine or different vaccine. It always gives 90-95%. Okay, so you can use anything. Our Covaxin is equally competent and good enough. They are the conventional pattern. In fact, in my opinion, the Covaxin might have induced much more a broad spectrum immunity, and we have to wait and see, follow up and see whether they can really protect against the so-called alpha virus as well, the so-called Indian mutation or strain. Now, this is the question that I am just raising, whether all require to be vaccinated. So we need to look at the timing, logistics, availability, and also the cost-benefit ratio once again. Now, yes, the critical thing is, it is true that if you have not vaccinated everybody and terminated the disease, eliminated the disease from the world or the population, like smallpox, even if there is a small pocket, if not vaccinated, then it may function as a reservoir, and the epidemic may occur in future. Now, then the question is, can't this disease be controlled by any other logistics? It is possible, like earlier days, smallpox, the strict isolation. They will put in the neem leaf in front of the house in the village, showing that, oh, this house has a patient. So essentially those days, they would not expect your other children living in other places to come back to your own home. I do not know the genetic basis, how they learned it earlier, but that is what has happened. Now, the other logistics are immunomodulators or potentiators. And also the native medicine, many times they do the same thing, or zinc, vitamin A, D, and so on. And also we need to consider about the environment and pollution. The environment pollution matters in terms of lung health, like nitrogen dioxide in the fumes from the cars, and which is 5 to 10 times higher in the cities. So the isolation is the best mechanism to contain the disease with that individuals. And the lockdown, it doesn't serve that good a purpose the way in which it looks like. It really served to a certain extent, but whether it is a climate and other natural dynamics it comes down is another question. So we need to have a very pragmatic approach at this time. We need to consider the economic burden all the time, and the lockdown, hospitalization, and vaccination costs are enormous. And again, that influenza, H1N1, they used to call it. Then they had H1N2 strain. Then they had H2N2 strain. It kept on evolving over a period of time, 4 or 5 times, once in every 6 to 7 years. Most of them had happened only in the Eastern world. Whether it has happened in the Eastern world or whether they were detected best in the Eastern world because of the higher population size, we do not know. So I made some calculation, and this was also available in the web. The cost of vaccinating the world. To vaccinate China, you require about $12.4 billion. India, about $12 billion. United States, only just $3 billion. See the economic burden on these countries. So the most affected is these high populated countries. Now, for example, the full lockdown cost about 26 billion US dollar. This is an estimate I obtained from Statista, a web page from June 11th. Government aid, it is about 50 billion. Vaccine cost, as per this statement, 12 billion. So far, only 4% has been vaccinated, maybe now a little more. Now, if you look at the Indian government budget, what Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, our finance minister, presented, total revenue is 280 billion and the total expenditure estimated is 490 billion. You just look at this cost. So the question is, China, how did it contain COVID? Definitely, even if there were deaths, definitely it will leak out and the information will always be available sooner or later. When I looked at the World Health Organization statistics, you just look at, there was only one peak they showed and the deaths here, and they have only very little here and there. Yes, we need to believe. Now, their policy was test, trace, isolate, contain. It was a military discipline that helped them and law-obedient people. And all the more, there are many papers available that they have used their own native medicines. You know, in China, most of the people practice only native medicine, even the government also. Only in big cities, they have the allopathic clinics and treatment and big hospitals to showcase first and then to have for their officers and higher ups treated. Now, for example, even green tea or a form of quinine called thymoquinine from this jeera, black jeera, the Indian one. It has been used extensively in Germany and other places to treat these patients, COVID. So what they did was, the healthcare workers, doctors and nurses, they first give them these native medicine shots, oral, for about 5 days, and then send them to handle these COVID patients, inpatients, for about 2 weeks. None of these people, healthcare workers, contracted the disease. This was a proof, you know. So that model in India also, we had this kind of, what in Tamil Nadu they call it as a kabasura kudineer or some things like that. The problem was the concoctions were different proportions and each Ayurvedic or practitioner had his own formula. That's where the difficulty comes in. No potency testing, quality control. And even once it is a naturopath, it doesn't have even license. That's where these medicines fail in these countries. So this is actually Indian Express, how China contained the virus did. It's a centralized planning and a local action. And if some of you are interested, you can always read this paper, very good one. And they have given all the medicines that they have used almost at the fag end of this paper. So it is the prevention and treatment of COVID using traditional Chinese medicine, a review. So we do have everything, treasures in our Ayurvedic homeopathic and native medicines. But there is always a cold war between these. In fact, in Kerala, 10% of the health budget, has been allocated to homeopathic treatment. Last week, I heard a webinar. They said that's good. But still, the problem is these two are two separate lines of treatment modalities. And there is no complementation between these two. That's the real trouble. Some of these diseases can be treated very well with homeopathy or Ayurvedic, some others by allopath. So in homeopathic, Schuller's 12 tissue remedies and biochemic medicine, he starts saying that all treatable diseases can be treated and cured by homeopathic medicines. Okay? So the China's statutory paid dividend, it seems, for them. And also they are very fast in their own manufacture and indigenous developments. So studious. Case finding, isolation, testing contacts, cordoning the area, or the people where they live, that's the towers and provinces. Hotspots, once they identify a hotspot, if there is an outbreak, they implemented mass testing and locked down the local area. And it was a military discipline that epidemic prevention laws were, and the police enforcement was. And then also, by now, they have vaccinated about 20 million people per day. They are vaccinating. And it is more of a carrot and stick policy. They gave even eggs and shopping coupons for getting vaccinated. Though crowded, rather than buying the vegetables in the market, if you really get your jab, you have done it, your chances of getting protected is greater. And strict enforcement also were in the offing there. If not vaccinated, you will lose a job. That's how they threaten them. And also the native medicines, as I explained to you earlier. Now, here comes, I just want to present in another, it's about 37 minutes now. The immunogenetics, that is, there is always a host genetic background which determines your immune status, your susceptibility to various diseases. This we have shown in leprosy even. Not all the infected people really develop the disease. That is actually the dictum. Every clinician knows about it. The disease is the manifestation of the symptoms. Infection is just entering into our body. Okay? So all the entry need not really lead to a disease. This is where 90% of the people, even for COVID, do not develop the disease. So it is, again, explains why 99.99% of the infected do not develop serious disease in the case of COVID. This is called lotus and cactus model. You can grow a lotus in a pond or a lily in a pond. And you have to grow the cacti in a rocky or a dry area. You cannot do the otherwise. So in other words, the COVID-19 more severe disease or disease patients, lungs and the body functions as ideal broth, ideal soil for the virus to grow. And in essence, it is not the virus alone that causes a disease. It is the pathological manifestation of the host, like inflammatory process, uncontrolled inflammation, that leads to the terminal stages of the disease and the cytokine storm in COVID-19 infection. So the genetics, there is a paper a couple of months ago. There is a receptor called the ACE2 receptor in our body, acetylcholinesterase receptor, which is responsible for the nerve conduction. And you just look at this wild type allele, we call it T allele. and that is TT plus, okay, that is a gene. And it is very high here, and the disease was also, mortality rate also was high. This is actually the inverse of that. It's the frequency of the T allele, okay? A allele is the high risk, that is a mutant allele, which is identified in about 10% of our population. So we need to take into cognizance many of these things, but from the point of view of treating a patient at the clinic, for the doctor, he has to somehow save the patient. But a long-term research only could really give a better idea of all this. So this allele, again, this region of the chromosome, has already been proven to be a potential risk factor for hypertension, type 2 diabetes, as well as coronary artery disease. So not all the infected develop the disease is an immunogenetic dictum that is really valuable and applicable even for COVID. So 90% infected recover even without any intervention. That is what has happened. 10% infection may, in 10% of the people, infection may be established, but the symptoms may vary depending on the individual's host genetics. And in 5% of the people in whom it further edges, appropriate protective immunity may be induced. Both antibodies and CTLs may answer for that. And in less than 1%, severe adverse reaction like pneumonia and cytokine storm sets in. So the death rate is about 0.1%, okay? Now, the alternative strategy, well, and also the vaccination strategy. To save this one, do we need to vaccinate 10,000 minus 1? That is 999. It's an enormous cost. Okay, what can then be the alternative strategy? India and the whole world are a captive of circumstances, not to think themselves and allowed to mend for themselves. And this is the price we pay for urbanization and globalization. Now we need to pay, we need to tour with the world and may need to pay the price as well. But still, nothing wrong in thinking alternatively. Don't worry, the chances of developing the COVID, even if infected, is very low. Sans morbidities. Your body defense system protects you, similar to police cops maintaining law and order. Immune system performs immune surveillance 24/7, your lifetime. However, COVID-19 progressed like a military invasion of a poor village. Disease adverse reactions progress faster than immune containment, it looks like, though invulnerable and susceptible. The disease do not manifest in healthier individuals. That is the most important message. So you keep fit. Now, then the vaccine vulnerables may need to be vaccinated earlier. Now, my suggestions are hotspots, the crowded cities, metropolis, marketplaces should first be identified and isolated, and targeted case finding, case reporting, home isolation need to be implemented. Contact testing is very essential in the local region, and the isolation is the best solution. And vaccination also may need to be staggered on a priority. First, frontline and high-risk individuals and populations. Then the prophylaxis, first-line treatment can also be from native and alternative medicines. They all have attempted, but for some reason and the confusion, this has not been implemented properly, and there is no data available to critically evaluate the utility of this. And also in terms of treatment, one may need to use minimum essential diagnostics. These two, just IL-6 and CRP, along with the oxygen level, may be essential in the first place. And the hospitals can be spared for more severe. And all the more important that need to be done is a mandatory documentation and introspection of the COVID death, treatment, and progression. These all, whether it comes under the treatment protocol, and if you talk to hospitals and clinics, they will say, oh, this is a research we don't have done. Somehow these need to be integrated. And the futuristic, which will be good to face the future, such epidemics and threats, is to integrate native and allopathic medical system under one roof, introduce family physician concept like the West. There are different tiers, and integrate dispensaries, PHCs, government hospitals, private clinics, corporate hospitals. It's not that impossible that this cannot be done. And then the most important and immediate suggestions can be, and the freebies, whatever the government gives, it should be linked to vaccine. Okay? Because the poor socioeconomic status, living in junkies and crowded areas are the most vulnerable. And then vaccination certificate should be made mandatory for ration, Medicare, be it even taskmark or hotel stay, travel industry, or entry to shopping malls, etc. Today I was just happy that for travel, they have made this vaccination certificate mandatory. And various countries are thinking of starting the travel and allowing the foreigners to come in if they have been vaccinated. That's a good thinking. So the priority of vaccination, as I mentioned, and as you all know, it goes in this way. Anybody who is really exposed or who is contacting or who is there in the public should all be vaccinated in the first place. Not the people there in the household or in the remote villages. This is very essential in staggering the vaccine with the little available sources. And finally, the Aadhaar card. Nowadays, they have linked the vaccination with the Aadhaar card, and at the spot itself, they put in the Aadhaar number, and you can get the certificate. Okay? That's a good move. Now, I wish even the death, the reason for death, the hospital records, what kind of treatment was given and why somebody died. Is it due to COVID morbidity per se or with the comorbidity? This hair split is more essential. Some very good work and the analysis have come out in the recent past from USA and other places, which may be an eye-opener for the Indian clinicians and policymakers. So this will facilitate case tracing, demographic mapping of the disease, and provide vital statistics of treatment and so on. So in other words, no jab, no job, no freebie. Strictly implemented by employer, industry, and government. That is the only way to go. So keep fit and enjoy life. Use preventive and native medicines, immune boosters as appropriate. Follow social distancing, healthy food and lifestyle. Avoid crowded places and cities. Wear masks, get vaccinated. That's all I have to share with you. It's almost about 15 minutes. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that presentation. We are in fact sensitized a lot about the virus, a lot about the vaccination, and how the concept of immunology will help in preventing this pandemic. There are a few questions in the chat box, which I thought I will just put it to you, sir, so that you can respond to the questions that the participants had asked.
Yeah.
First is, I was one of the topics. So there are a few questions that came in the chat box. So I will ask one by one so that we can demystify the apprehensions that the participants are having. First is about, can one have adequate immune response after the first dose?
Yes, they do have. They do develop. It's about, it offers about 70 to 75% protection even Covaxin. And with the second dose, it goes up to 90%, 95%.
And then the corollary question to that is why people are getting infected again after vaccination?
Why people are infected?
Again after having vaccinated.
Yes, it depends on the timing after vaccination. If you have been vaccinated today and tomorrow you go to a marriage function where 200 people are there, and there you have been infected with a very virulent virus and a large doses, somebody sneezed at you, then you got it. Your vaccine may not work. The live virus, about very huge dose, dose matters. Whether one virus or two virus enters in or 10,000 virus enters into your lungs matters, okay, in terms of immunity. So that might be the reason. Or, as I mentioned to you, the ACE2 receptor, whether you have a receptor, this ACE2 receptor, what it does is, in the lungs, it is expressed more, and in the kidneys, it is expressed more. So they are the receptors for this virus. So virus has to attach to this ACE2 receptor. So it depends on how efficient this receptor attaches to the virus. Okay, and invaginate. That is what that's why I showed you that animation that explains. Okay. So these are all the factors we need to consider. But how many percentage of those have developed the disease? One looked at, and why? This is where, as I mentioned to you, a very clear case recording and follow-up is the need of the hour. Yes, please, next.
Next one is a very, very essential question, which most of them would like to ask. One is, what is the difference between Covaxin and Covishield, and which is the best option for us in India?
You see, the Covaxin is a conventional method of vaccine preparation. Okay, that is, you grow the virus in culture, isolate, and then kill them with some very low level of formaldehyde or some preservative. So all the proteins of the virus are maintained in the near natural shape and condition. So they induce a very broader immune response, not only to spike protein alone, even to the other membrane proteins, even internal antigens. Maybe Bharat Biotech, Ella Krishna should be in a position to tell you about that, okay? Now, the Covishield is a vaccine that is grown in the chimp virus, chimpanzee adenovirus. Adenovirus is a family of viruses that are almost commensal in human, chimp, and everything. Earlier, they were Professor Adrian Hill from Oxford University. Actually, he was my collaborator, and our leprosy genome scan study we published with him in 2001. So what he did was, you identify the important antigens or epitope, we call it. I need to explain here. You have a pumpkin, you buy a pumpkin, take it home. You don't eat straight away the whole pumpkin. You cut it into small pieces, cook it appropriately, add condiments and everything, then eat. This is what is exactly happening in the immune system also. Immune system, the macrophages present the antigen, T cells, they recognize, and macrophages present not the whole antigen, whatever administered, but only a small peptide, we call it, 10 amino acid in length, or 10 to 12 amino acid in length. This is called the epitope. When you digest a virus, or when a virus is digested inside a macrophage, there can be hundreds of peptides produced like that. Not all of them are immunogenic, or equally immunogenic, or equally inducing protective immunity. Okay. So, in vitro, in silico, Adrian Hill's lab run through the DNA and protein of this virus. Protein sequences are known, and then select the epitopes that will be bound by these T cells. And you just synthesize all these and then pack into the adenovirus. So once the adenovirus, it is there inside, you just streak it in the appropriate cocktail. Overnight, you have got millions of viral particles or these adenovirus particle produced. And you just inactivate that, in this case, I think, and then that is the one that is being given to you to be administered. Okay, so it is again selected epitopes. In the case of the Pfizer's mRNA vaccine, it is just the sequences of the mRNA sequences of the virus, the viral spike, that is really put into the vector and amplified in vitro, synthesized in vitro in the dishes. So being the mRNA, that is the reason why it should be maintained in minus 80 degrees, because the mRNA is more sensitive to temperature. So even minus 20 or ice is not sufficient. It will lose its function. So there the principle is, in the first two, the principle is you provide epitopes, proteins, okay? So that is a vaccine. In the case of the mRNA vaccine, you inject the mRNA into the body. The mRNA goes into integrate with the host cell and then start synthesizing, instead of the full COVID, only just the spikes alone they manufacture, like in industry. Okay? So instead of thousands of viruses being produced in an infected individuals, it is thousands of spikes produced and released in the body of the immunized person. And that is recognized, and antibody or CTL immunity develops. So that's the difference between all these. In fact, I had a very beautiful the animation on this production of mRNA. If somebody is interested, send me the mail. I will share that link with you. Okay. Is it okay? Is it clear?
Yes. Fine, sir. Fine, sir. In fact, I have received response in the chat box that has been clearly to that understanding.
Okay,
So,
right. Good.
Next question is, why that all other virus immunization works for lifetime if taken in childhood, but coronavirus vaccine works only for a very few months? And is there a need to have a third and fourth boost jabs to keep continuing the vaccines so that I am away from this corona infection? So that is another question.
Well, this is in general, in immunology, we teach and we have learned that viral immunity is in general lifelong. Only bacterial immunity is short-lived. Okay? I am not sure how these people came to the conclusion it is short-lived. Okay? Now, to prove the point, we need to wait for 10 years at least to see whether the vaccinated individuals again get the COVID. So I don't think it is more of a commercial interest, in my opinion.
So the apprehension about third and fourth booster doses, we have to wait and see, probably, I think.
Yeah, two doses are okay. And if at all there is further epidemic, it may not be by the same virus. It may be some kind of mutated virus like this alpha, you know, after 5-6 years. That's what in the influenza happened. So we need to wait and see. This may be premature decisions. We don't have evidence on that it is short-lived, at least.
Okay. The next one is you were explaining about this LGM, LGG and all. Can you one participant has asked whether it can be elaborated a little bit so that we are able to understand it, and how
IgM, IgG, right?
and IgG.
Yeah, okay. You know that during the course of an immune response, when the antigen is presented by macrophages to T cell and also B cell, they recognize, and the type of cell called the T helper cell helps the B cell to produce the templates. It is something like, you know, in casting industry, they will have a mold and then they will cast either brake drum or any toys or anything, okay? So the B lymphocyte produce antibodies against the configuration of the epitope, okay, that is presented by the macrophages. So that is how it is a lock and key mechanism. These antibodies go and neutralize that epitope, okay? If it is the epitope is of a disease-producing epitope, that is neutralized so that you don't have the disease. Now, in this process, again, it is ingenious mechanism of nature. Some 40 years ago, when we were students, there was a question whether the IgM type of immunoglobulin and IgG type of immunoglobulin are produced by different lymphocyte. How? No, it is the same kind of B lymphocyte which has been primed, we call it primed, become memory cell. Upon recall by revaccination, they sprang up, immediately clonal expansion occurs, and they start producing antibody. Now, what is the difference between the first immunization and the second immunization? During the first immunization, majority of the antibodies produced in the first place as the earlier peak will be of IgM type of antibody. This is one type of antibody. It is a pentamer. It has about 10 combining sites. It is a very effective hemagglutinin. Okay. But after about a week of that, the same cell start producing IgG type of antibody, which is only a dimer. Okay, a single unit with a 2 antigen binding site. In the original 10 antigen binding site. So though this is 2 antigen binding site, it is produced in enormous amount and much higher, and we call it avid. It is a high avid antibody. It has a much stronger binding than the IgM. So that is a basic principle behind giving a booster. After the second injection or vaccination, there will be predominantly IgG antibody will be produced and to very high level. That's what tackles the virus. If at all later, virulent virus enters into your body, that will be mopped up much more quickly. That's the difference between these two. Is that clear to that person who asked the question?
Yes, sir. The next question is, why do people on blood thinners, aspirin, etc. avoid vaccination? They have some blood clots. Is it a precaution to be taken, or people who are taking blood thinners can also get vaccinated?
You see that there were a few, especially with the Covishield, this kind of blood clot they have been telling, but it's only a very few cases, and essentially these all have been boiled down to comorbidities. Okay. So blood thinner, the purpose of the blood thinner is to avoid clotting, yes. So I don't think that it is contraindicated, these people. They can very well take. the vaccine because the mechanism of actions are entirely different. Okay, there the platelet count is reduced in the blood thinner. Platelet count is reduced and the clotting time is increased so that it doesn't form a clot, okay, in the vessels, coronary arteries and so on. I don't think there is any bar from getting immunized. With the physician's advice, they can always take the vaccination because only immune system is going to operate on this, not the circulatory system or any other biochemical pathway. Okay?
Right, sir. Okay, sir. One more question is, can we administer anesthesia to a person who has been vaccinated?
Yes, anesthesia is a stress. In general, any stress depresses your health. Any sort of stress. This is because of the hormonal circuits. And it depends, when do you want to have the vaccine? Not immediately after having anesthesia or vice versa, right? Now, after vaccination, it is always better that even the mild fever is not controlled. If it's a very high fever, yes, you can take some paracetamol. Otherwise, allow the immune system to play its own role and immunity develop. So at least for a week after taking the vaccines, it is better that you don't take many other anti-inflammatory or antibiotic and things like that, unless otherwise it is absolutely essential.
Right.
Okay? Yeah.
Then can a person having allergic to penicillin, sulfa drugs, and having Stephen Johnson syndrome be vaccinated?
Well, these allergies are all very much antigen specific. They are very specific to the epitopes. Okay? They are very specific only to the epitopes. There is no bar. This is where in the vaccine center, they ask you to sit for half an hour, whether your breathing increases or whether you have any kind of dyspnea and so on, or palpitation. They observe for all these things. If you don't develop for half an hour after vaccination, normally you are not, for any drug for that matter. See, penicillin anaphylactic shock is within seconds, within 10, 20 seconds. The advisory is, in such case, even don't remove the needle, only just remove the syringe alone and put the antidote, push the antidote into the same needle, the same place. Okay, that is the lessons. So, no bar. They can always consult their physician and get it done. Maybe you sit for more than 1 hour and then see whether you are all right and then go home. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if viral immunity is lifelong, would a person who already got COVID and got cured requires vaccination?
In general, no. There is absolutely no need, but maybe after 6 months or 1 year they can have it, though not immediately. Or even if you have within 1 month or 2 months, doesn't matter. It's going to add value.
Penultimate question, sir. Can
Yes,
people
please.
take steroid medication for arthritis or people having high ESR? Does it affect their vaccination schedule?
Yes, high ESR means infection or inflammatory disease. Those who are on steroid, yes, you need to consult the doctor and see that. Usually the steroids are immunosuppressive. Okay, so whether the desired immunity will develop in them is really a question. It depends on the type of steroid, how much, how long, and what for you take. All matters. So physician should be in a better position to tell that. Yes.
Sir, if one dose of vaccine gave adverse effects, body swelling, fever, etc., Is it recommended to take another shot or go in for a different brand?
There is no information as such on that, I believe. Doesn't matter. You can go for the same kind of vaccine. Once again, doesn't matter. Or you can go for another vaccine. And in fact, there are information that by taking two different vaccines, Covishield and mRNA vaccine, for example, it gives a much better and robust immune response. They climb. It depends on what kind of test they use to evaluate this. We are blank about that. What kind of test they or readout they used to state that you have a much better and robust immunity. At least I do not know. We should really look at all the papers, that they have submitted to the authorizing agents. Yes.
Sir, persons with chronic renal problems undergoing regular dialysis are at times suggested BCG vaccine instead of COVID vaccines. How should we understand this?
They are suggested BCG vaccine, is it?
That is what they say.
Possibly because of immunodepression, they all are on immunosuppression and so on. And BCG offers a general overall well-being and a good immunity against a variety, and also TB and leprosy and so on. COVID also of the same kind, and there is no bar from giving in immunological parlance, but it is left to the clinician concerned what they want to do.
Thank you. Can black fungus infection be explained?
Well, in immunodepressed individuals, it will always flare up. So, the question is, one, the COVID virus as such, whether it induces immunodepression or the medication that is administered, very aggressive medication. One is the steroids, and another one is the cocktail of antibiotics. The cocktail, you see that it's azithromycin, doxy, and some other. All the three, any one of them may be sufficient recommended, but in some cases, they give all the three, the panic stricken, So it is more the panic to on the part of the physician to save the patient. They put everything together. As I showed you in one of the slides, there are different phases, and you need to determine at what phase you are interfere and with what. Now I will tell you an example. Now, I think, I don't know, Kadila or somebody has come out with a monoclonal antibody that is very effective in protecting against COVID in the initially ill patients. Okay, but you have to pay through nose. It's about 75,000 rupees in India, I was told. Rather, last wave itself, many of the clinics attempted the plasma therapy. The problem there was they obtained plasma from a person probably who have recovered from the infection. They didn't have better methods, and I believe they didn't really well characterize these plasma for the neutralizing antibodies, for the IgG type, IgM type, and they simply got from somebody and then mixed even from 2 or 3 people and give it to somebody else. At what stage? All these should be thoroughly analyzed and brought and should be discussed by the clinical community, physician community, to make further decision before telling plasma therapy doesn't work. And also here, lot of commercial interests, which we may not go into. Okay?
Okay. And one question is that I have taken both doses of Covaxin. should I take Covishield also again to boost my immunity and 2 more doses?
I don't think, because Covishield is, Covaxin is quite broader. Covishield also is quite broader. And unless otherwise we know the epitope specificities of these vaccine-induced immunity, we cannot comment on that. As it stands, there is no need that he takes another vaccine.
One final last question, sir. Can you throw some herd immunity?
Which one?
Herd immunity, sir. Can you
Herd immunity. Oh, it's a big word. People use it. What do you mean by herd immunity is when automatically by exposure to the environment and infectious environment, when most of the vulnerables are susceptible, be it genetic or otherwise, have developed the disease, and there is no more people developing the disease in the population, we call the population has attained a herd immunity. That is, this population has developed or attained herd immunity. Tamil Nadu population has attained herd immunity. Okay. Whereas the people there in Andaman Nicobar, no. Then you look at the reasons why and how and so on. So the herd immunity is the immunity that each individual develops on their own by the exposure, be it subclinical or through disease. Okay? That's what is the herd immunity it stands for. So in general, the people believe when 60 to 70% of the population has been infected, then there may not be any further infection to occur. The rest 30% also might have been infected, or they may not be susceptible, something like that. That's called herd immunity. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. I think you have patiently answered almost all the questions that were put in the box, except a few which were of highly technical in nature, probably which requires a physician's intervention rather than a genetic answer. So now, may I take the privilege of inviting Sri P.
Srivatsan.
Yes, sir. Please.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Professor, I have got a personal question. I contracted COVID after taking the first dose of Covaxin. Exactly after the 15 days, I contracted the disease. So my question is whether I should go for a second dose. If yes, why? So in my opinion, vaccination is nothing but a mild infection, so that the body reacts to it and develops an antibody. If I got infected, I should have developed the antibodies. In my opinion, I should not go for the second dose. Please.
Sure. That's very good. That's in fact a very good question, and decision making is more difficult. Now, how serious was the disease when you developed after 15 days? And with what medication you were treated?
I've been given remdesivir. So my RT-PCR was like 20/40.
Okay.
Diagnosed as a pneumonia. All my 5 lobes of the lungs have been with the glassy patches. That was the observation.
Okay. This is 2 weeks after vaccination, right?
Yeah.
Probably the infection would have set in before vaccination. The infection, you might have been infected already, and you have got also simultaneously the vaccine. That's the reason. But you have been treated only with remdesivir. Did they go in for any other treatment?
No.
Steroids?
No steroids, I think. Yeah.
That means perfect. You are safe. Antibiotics?
Antibiotics, of course. I think I have taken augmentin kind of a thing, like in the
That's okay.
That's a broad spectrum antibiotics.
Okay. You don't need to really worry, sir. You have already developed, and then
the virus also has gone in, and you were RT-PCR positive, right?
Yeah.
At that time, 15th day, RT-PCR positive.
Yes.
So that means the virus had entered in, and whatever with it, you have been immunized naturally by nature. Okay, so that is the best treatment. But one thing is, remdesivir would have really neutralized all the viruses, killed all the viruses. But still, you would have developed an antibody. You don't need to worry right now. Maybe after 6 months, you can get yourself tested for the antibodies and see what happens, if at all. But if it is negative, again, don't worry, because 10% of the people will always be negative. This is what we experience in TB. Yes, sir.
Okay, doctor.
Thank you. Thank you.
There is one more organ also very regularly being used, sir.
Which one?
Viral load. Why, how important it is as far as the infection is concerned, and what is this viral load? Can you just throw some light on that?
Yeah, that's a viral load is the number of virus in your body is called viral load. Okay. This is what in the RT-PCR, real-time PCR, you try to also, you can exactly assess the viral load. As I told you, the quantum of virus that infects you in the first place counts a lot in terms of ensuing immunity. Okay. So somebody who becomes positive in 10th cycle, okay. This is what in the RT-PCR. Nowadays, people know about, I am in positive in 26th cycle. People say about it, okay, without understanding what it is. Now, this PCR gives, what is that? Some noise is coming. All others can switch off the mic. Hello?
Yes, sir, done.
Okay. So, it is the doubling time of the virus, you know that, okay? It's an exponential growth. The same thing happens in the PCR also, the RT-PCR, what you are doing. Here, every cycle, when 2 has become 4, 4 has become 8, 8 has become 16, 16 has become 32, every cycle. Okay, it is a temperature cycling, which really leads to this exponential increase in the virus. Actually, you amplify the virus. So, the amplification of the virus, the quantum, depends on the initial sample that you put into the machine or the test tube. Okay? For example, for me as well as for you, they put in the same 10 microliter or something like that to test, for example. In me, if it is, there are only 2 virus, whereas in yours, it is about 10,000 virus. Then 10,000 is going to become 20,000 in the next cycle. Whereas in me, 10 is going to become 20 in the next cycle. Okay? So, you will reach the peak yearly in your sample. So, by 10th cycle itself, you would reach the peak in the RT-PCR. Whereas with my sample, only by 20th or 26th cycle, it will reach the peak. This matters in terms of decision making, how much of virus is there in your body and the viral load. Okay? Then also, this is equally important in terms of the so-called viral shedding through sneeze, cough, or other things, so that you infect the other individual at home or in isolation place. Okay? So I don't see any study from India on these viral load correlations. I'm not. So all this, you know, the problem here is the hospitals and the medical college hospitals, as well as private clinics or corporate hospitals, they are all standalone, only treatment. And most of these platforms for genomics or these kind of studies are all available in university settings. Now, if you take Tamil Nadu, Anna University has plenty of this kind of machines. Almost every college has nowadays this kind of machines. So your proper discussion, your proper planning will easily answer all these questions what you are asking. In the absence of any of our own data, we are groping in the dark and following whatever is said by the Western world.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that explanation. I think I would rather now request our Joint Director, Shri P. Ramohan, to give his vote of thanks and acknowledgements, please. Over to you, sir, please.
Yeah, before Ramohan,
Yes, sir.
I want to thank Ramohan for introducing me to this light group, as well as Mr. Manohar for making this. I hope that we all have learned, and you all have learned, and you are the people who can really spread the message and get the things done. And I have done my part. It is now up to you to really implement as police cops. Okay, Ramohan, thank you.
Yes, Professor, no, in fact, I should thank Ramohan, because he only has taken this initiative. He has sent a link where you have taken a class elsewhere. And he said, sir, we can also make best use of the knowledge of the professor. So immediately I accepted it, because I went through your your webinar. It was really fantastic, and already started getting comments and about your presentation right now from my colleagues across, saying that it is quite useful and things have been put in a proper perspective. I personally thank you, and thank Ramohan also for taking this initiative.
Yes.
Over to you, Ramohan.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. After having Manohar sir having spoken a lot about the presentation, I don't think I have to add to the Thanksgiving part. Thank you, ADG sir, for giving us this wonderful opportunity to host Professor sir for giving us a wonderful lecture. Professor sir, it has been a wonderful lecture, and the chat box is full of a lot of queries which have remained unanswered because of the paucity of time today, and a lot of issues are there. One person is asking if we don't intervene within the 5th day, what will be the progress of the disease, like that. So a lot of technical questions have come. A lot of bouquets are also there in the chat box. Ms. Sudha has said very informative. Thank you, sir. And one Hema Swaminathan has also given her collates for the webinar. So a lot of people have been benefited out of this lecture, sir. I thank the National Academy of Customs, Indirect Taxes and Narcotics, Mr. Venkat Reddy, the Additional Director General in Bangalore, Mr. Narayan Reddy, Mr. Venugopal Nair, and last but not the least, Mr. Srivatsan, who is always a pivot in our relationship, sir. He's a wonderful person, a wonderful companion to organize such programs. And Professor sir, it has been a revelation for all of us. In fact, I should tell you that there are many doctors in this service, in the revenue service, who are also chatting, who have joined late in the session. They are expressing regret in my WhatsApp that they have not been able to come to the session on time because of some other preoccupations. I should thank you on behalf of the Directorate General of Taxpayer Services and CBIC in particular, and the DGTS Chennai and Bangalore zones. I thank all of you, and Professor sir, thank you so much for sparing your valuable time and coming to our platform and enlightening us about the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccination part of it. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to add, I have asked my friend, the photographer, to document the lecture, and we will edit appropriately and put it in the web so that it will be useful to other people as well. Okay, the doctors like you mentioned. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. Let us hope to cooperate further.
Yes, sir. Yes, thanks.